Good morning and welcome to the programme. You're listening to BBC Radio Kent Breakfast with John and Libby. It's good to have your company this morning. Now we're returning to our top story, and a Kent woman is taking legal action against the NHS, claiming a lack of specialist beds in the county for people with eating disorders may have contributed to her daughter's suicide. 21-year-old Lisa Inkin was sent to a private hospital in Ealing as she battled severe anorexia. Her mother, Sherry, says sending her so far away from home added to Lisa's distress.
On the day that she died, she was travelling back to the eating disorders unit in Ealing, where she was an inpatient. She had been home on leave. She came home the previous Thursday, and she'd been on weekend leave. She couldn't be kept locally because there weren't any beds for her, and she'd spent the whole of the previous year in Ealing. She seemed quite happy that weekend, but she did say to me that they've fixed my body, but they haven't fixed my head.
Tell us, I know it's painful, tell us about what happened, what Lisa did.
She went down onto the platform of the Underground on the District line and stepped off the platform in front of a train and was killed. I want justice for Lisa. She was let down by various people, by the local trust, with no care for her in the community on previous occasions. They need to keep more beds locally instead of closing them down. When people are in crisis, there's nowhere for them to turn to. For somebody with a mental illness to be taken out of their local area and away from family, it just adds to their distress. It does not help. I know that if she'd had better treatment, she'd still be here.
Well, Nick Fairweather, a medical negligence specialist, is Sherry Inkin's solicitor. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning.
So can you just explain who Sherry is suing and what she's actually suing them for?
Yes, this will be a claim under the Human Rights Act, and it's a claim that there were breaches of Article 2 of the European Convention, which protects the right to life. And in broad terms, we're saying two things. Firstly, as far as the local mental health trust is concerned, they were guilty of systemic failings in failing to provide a proper service for Lisa, both in terms of not having local beds available, so that she spent about 11 months out of area in Ealing and a brief period in Chelmsford, and also in terms of when she was discharged home and was in desperate need of community care to support her. That need on two occasions simply wasn't addressed, and on one of those two occasions the whole situation really reached the point of farce, because the local trust who had referred her out of area to the Ealing Hospital were saying, oh, we can't accept you back into our service unless we have a referral. So they'd referred Lisa to this hospital and then wanted a referral back from the hospital. I mean, just bureaucratic nonsense, which they eventually have admitted was an error. So that's the local trust. As far as Signet Hospital is concerned, on the eve of Lisa's death, a friend of hers was exchanging texts with Lisa, and Lisa had made serious suicide bids before, and there was a pattern where she did sort of warn people of what she was planning to do, and this friend phoned the hospital and notified the hospital staff that she'd had these farewell suicide texts from Lisa, and nothing was done that evening. And also the records that the police, as part of the inquest, managed to secure from Lisa's own mobile phone showed that Lisa herself phoned the hospital on the evening of her death, and yet nobody, it wasn't recorded, any calls, and nobody, none of the nurses who were on duty were able to remember Lisa calling at all. So that was a missed operational failing on the part of the Signet Hospital, which we are saying caused Lisa's death, and the claim will be taken forward on that basis.
In terms of the trust here in Kent, does it have the type of care that she needed, or is it the case that there is only those types of beds in London?
Well, the local trust has created an unfortunate situation with a lack of care. There are 6 beds throughout Kent for eating disorders based at the Red House in Maidstone, and the family's understanding is that the local trust is proposing now to effectively close those beds in favour of a day service there. So, I mean, the fact that Lisa spent so much time out of area really speaks for itself. And, you know, this is such a lose-lose-lose situation, Libby, because it's horrendous for someone who was as poorly as Lisa was to be taken out of her local community many, many miles away when she was in a state of acute distress, away from families and her home environment. But, you know, it also costs more money in the end, because people who need to be in hospital have to be put somewhere, and so she was in private facilities, which cost a fortune. So nobody gains through this, and what she and her family lose, and what the community loses, and this is why there's been such a campaign locally in Medway to stop shutting these beds and across Kent. What they lose is the local network. You know, specialist psychiatrists, specialist psychologists, specialist nurses on wards linked to specialists in the community and crisis teams. All that network is gone, and really, when Lisa was out of area, you know, to all intents and purposes, she was really forgotten by the local trust. And you know, they've now brought in some changes, but they're such common sense things that should have been there all the time. You know, proper CPA meetings leading up to discharge, meeting with people within 7 days of being discharged, communicating with these hospitals wherever they may be in the country. And so, you know, what's tragic about this, they are dismantling a system that was working very well, and this is the tragic consequence of what happens when they do that.
You're obviously an expert in these types of cases. You probably see them quite a lot. How bad do you think the failings were in Lisa's care? How bad is this case?
Well, Libby, I've been practicing medical law for 20 years in Kent, and I deal with all kinds of medical cases, as do my team. But I have had a succession of cases over the last 18 months, 2 years, maybe 6 or 7 cases, very similar to this. Not all in Kent. I had one in Southampton recently where people have effectively died, have committed suicide because the service level hasn't been there. And that's not something that I've experienced previously in my career in Kent. So I think there's a very real problem. And when you look at these cases, and you know, I know it's a sensitive thing sitting in the NHS, and this isn't about money, it's about justice for Lisa, as Sherry says. But, you know, the mistakes that are made are just unbelievable, and they were in this case. To have direct notification that one of your patients who's on home leave and is due back the following day is texting saying she's going to take her life, and there's been a pattern of that leading up to previous suicide bids, and to just do nothing about that, it's just mind-boggling. So it's a very, very serious case, and we will take it forward now on behalf of this family. But what this family, like most of my clients, really want, more than compensation or anything else, is to make sure that proper and lasting changes are brought so other people in the future, other patients and their families, don't have to go through what Lisa and her family have been put through.
Nick Fairweather, thank you. That's Nick Fairweather, a medical negligence specialist who's representing Sherry Inkin, a Kent woman who's taking legal action against the NHS, claiming a lack of specialist beds in the county for people with eating disorders may have contributed to her daughter's suicide. And in a statement, NHS England told us the sort of centre patients like Lisa require isn't available in every county, but will ensure appropriate action is taken to respond to the lessons learnt from this case. And a spokesperson for Signet Healthcare's Ealing Hospital told us they'll carry out a full investigation and will write to the coroner as requested to ensure it continues to drive forward high-quality standards throughout the hospital. And just after 8, we'll be speaking to Rebecca Field from BEAT, the UK's national eating disorder charity.